So good afternoon, January the 16th, 2015. This is CISG114, Section 1, Web Technology and Life. Today is the second class in the second week of the semester. It's day number 4. Okay, let's get started. Welcome back. Today we have 3 students coming. Actually, we have altogether 4 students in this class now. So it's basically it makes up 2 pairs. All right. So from 5 to 4, and then we got 3 students here. All right, that's very good. Anyway, maybe the time is not very good. It's a lunch time. So last semester I have 60 students. Okay, this semester I got 5 students. All right, so it's all right. Now basically we are in week number 2. So the theme is still inquiry-based learning because we are in learning contract number 1. But if you look at the topics we're going to help you in point about, this week we're going to look at common module number 1 is on Introduction to Information Technology and Knowledge Society. And in the last class, Alice was not here, it's okay. We invite you to continue to look at the ideas of inquiry-based learning, okay? And then we take a look at digital nations. We look at the chapter number 1, and I invite you to go home to look at the whole documentary at time. So today we're going to go back to what we are going to do, well, better say what we have been doing ever since Monday. First of all, I would like to reinforce your ideas on IBL, okay? Last time you heard the big ideas of IBL from one teacher and one student coordinator, and this time I would like to give you a specific case on a specific university called the ASU at the Appalachian State University in the United States. So a couple minutes I would like to reinforce your ideas on IBL first of all, okay? So watch it and put some thought into it.
Inquiry-based learning. Inquiry-based learning.
Inquiry means to ask within. So what you're trying to do as a teacher is you've got to ask them to look inside themselves for the question, the desire to know something. You start with the desire to know.
Inquiry-based learning is about training students to act just like scholars. We, scholars, frame questions and we answer them. That's just what we're training students to do when they're in an inquiry-based learning environment. In an inquiry-based learning environment, they're acting just like scholars.
It wasn't simply a lecture. They were having to be active in coming up with their own ideas and interpretations. Even if they were wrong, they had to be active in thinking about it rather than just be passive receptors of information.
There's a common misperception about inquiry-based learning, and that somehow inquiry-based learning doesn't involve lecturing. It does. In an inquiry-based learning environment, professors provide content. What's different is that students do something with the content that is very immediate to them. They'll go and apply those concepts and that content to questions that they've designed.
And that's the goal, to liberate the student into being the primary question asker and learner. The idea is to turn students into question askers again.
A lot of times we undermine what children know or what students like us know by not asking them questions, by not asking them to go out in the community, do research. We almost cripple them
It's more engaging than regular textbook learning.
When you actually care about what you're learning, then you remember it in the long term.
Instead, inquiry-based learning enables students to be part of knowledge.
If they don't get a chance to practice asking questions, then how are they ever going to get free? They're going to think they need a classroom or a teacher or a structure their whole lives.
It's important that they understand the knowledge that's in that textbook, but I think it's also important that Appalachian students have an understanding as to how does new knowledge and how are new discoveries made? How did that knowledge get into the textbook to begin with? Maybe even it spurs them on to think about, you know what, maybe I can discover something, or maybe I could do a study or create this piece of work that nobody else has done yet. Don't ask a question you know the answer to. Ask genuine questions and try to pursue an investigation of them with students.
If you want to get teachers to want to do this, they themselves have to be willing to do inquiry. They have to be the inquiry experts. They have to just wonder about everything.
It's much safer for the teacher just to get up in front like an expert and spout a lot of facts and impress people with how smart they are. It's much harder to reveal your own ignorance in front of a group of people when you're supposed to be the expert.
Then I have to model ignorance and confusion. I can't just model knowing. I have to model exploring.
Imagine accurately what students are interested in so you can make suggestions, so you can kind of get them to think in a curious way. And yet still fulfill the requirements of the class.
It's just much more straightforward for all of us if I just tell you. And if that's all I do, it's deadly.
And I may do quite a bit of talking in any one class. In another class, they may be working on their own in small groups.
You got to have the common universe that everybody's working in, so everybody's taking the same class. But then students have to somehow individualize it or instantiate it in reasonably unique ways.
You definitely leave frustrated because the more you know, the more confused you are.
Like, accept that I'm learning in a different way now.
Students also resist. A lot of students do want to be told. They like to come in and say they're visual learners. I don't know what this means. It means put a PowerPoint on the slide and let me copy stuff down.
Students usually come into my class at first, on the first day, thinking that knowledge is all about me, the professor, pouring some knowledge into their heads, and later they, the students, will take an exam and prove to me that they've memorized it.
It's really easy for me to hear something, see an example, and retain that, and then be tested over it.
You set traps for students and then kind of trap students, so y'all get wary. You're always looking for the teacher trap. People won't engage.
In an inquiry-based learning environment, the setup is completely different. It's about the students acting like scholars. It's about students creating knowledge. It's about empowering students so that they believe, no, not that they believe, that they understand that they can do what scholars do. They don't just have to absorb the opinions of other people.
It's just a lot more open-ended. It's just more fun in general, actually.
I really liked the fact that it was more of a conversation instead of being talked at.
It's frustrating at times when you have other teachers that are still trying to do the, old school sense of education where they're trying to just be like, A, B, and C are on the test, and this is what you need to know, and then you understand the subject. And I've found myself more questioning.
There'll be benefits. If you do it, at the end of the semester, you'll discover you have capacity you didn't know you had.
I would definitely say I've learned more in this class with inquiry-based learning because I'm forced to hold my knowledge as my own and use it every day as opposed to just the hour that I'm in my class. And I take it everywhere with me
you need a well-rounded education to be, to integrate into society, but at the same time, you can't just memorize what the teacher tells you and be done with it, because then you'll never integrate into society.
All of our knowledge is grounded in a desire, a deep desire to be in community with other people. That why do we develop knowledge anyway? I mean, like, I'm just talking about like over 10,000 years or something. Like, why does anybody care about anything? We care about it because we want to be in the world successfully with the people we love.
It applies to so much of my life. It's not just about academia, it's life.
I think invite you to come to sit here together. It's much more easier here to have conversations. Education, it's not for life, but education, it's life itself. Okay, that it's a very significant statement produced by John Dewey more than 1 century ago. So I would like you to spend not more than 5 minutes time, the three of you coming together, and to share a little bit about what you can understand from this video. What is the purpose behind showing you this video? And what can you capture from the ideas shared here? From the students, from the faculty members, these are the teachers. Definitely, they have a perspective because they are from the ASU, the Appalachian State University, okay? And they advertise that they do inquiry-based learning for their students. Now try to understand what is meant by that. Of course, there's another very interesting piece here called discipline-based inquiry, all right? That it's much more knowledge-related. We're going to come to that later. But basically, over the past 10 minutes, after you've watched this very interesting video, helping you to understand a little bit of the IBL perspective from the ASU, what is your personal reactions, or what kind of feedback can you produce for your fellow students to look at? Okay, so may I just give you from 3 to 5 minutes time. First of all, you organize yourself a little bit, then you share it in the group, okay? And I will be eavesdropping, all right? So, can you manage? Do you understand? All right, what you need to do? Now, if you want a little bit more specific instructions, you need a piece of paper, all right? And then each one of you spend 1 minute, write on that piece of paper your immediate feedback on the video, all right? And then you exchange that piece of paper to the fellow students next to you, okay? That is the kind of what we call structure exercise we can do to help you a little bit more to understand how to make the best use of the video. Now, may I just give you 1 piece of paper per person, all right? And so you write down your immediate thoughts about this video. Definitely, the theme is inquiry-based learning. Then you spend 1 or at most 2 minutes to write down something. Or you can draw a picture to represent your immediate reactions. Okay? Now let's get that done first, in the first 2 minutes. All right? I give you at most 2 minutes to capture your ideas after watching this 10 minutes of video. Okay? have 1 minute left, and then take a look at the piece of paper you have. Now remember, when you try to capture the idea, you do not need to capture it in textual format. You can draw a diagram, or you can just do it in plot form, okay? Okay, now I would like you to do something like this. Alice, you pass the paper to Kelvin. Kelvin, you pass the paper to Jack, and Jack is going to pass his paper to Alice. So each one is going to take a good look at your fellow students' writing. You do not need to explain, you just keep track of the paper, and then you just read it, all right? So yours go to Alice, Alice go to Kelvin, Kelvin's go to yours, okay? Now try to understand from the writing or the anything produced by your fellow students what he is or what she is thinking of IBL after watching this particular 10 minutes video. Well, you see, the best thing is if you have the mobile phone, you get online, okay, and you just type in what you believe it's there from the piece of paper you obtain, and then we can see the writing all together. Go to week number 2, get into this public online discussion forum, and then you create a thread. Now, name the thread as day number 4. Okay. For this day 04, if your name Jack's respond, okay, to IBM, something like this. Everybody, you can type something, the title. If you're not Jack, if you're Alice, you can say Alice responds to IBL. If you're Kelvin, you can type Kelvin's response to IBL, okay? Now after you type the title, you first of all produce something like form. If your paper, it's from, if I'm Jack, my paper is from Kelvin, I type Kelvin's response, and you try to type in what you saw there, okay? Try to type in Kelvin's response if I were Jack. If I were Kelvin, I would try to type in Alice's response. If I were Alice, I'm going to type in Jack's response because you're looking at the papers now. Okay? So once you're finished typing in someone else's response, you can say post to the forum. Post to the forum. Okay? The job is to produce your fellow students' response. Okay? Remember, you can always edit your pose. For example, I'm editing my pose now. Okay, so let me see. Let me go back to the forum now. So this is Jack's response, but that it's the previous response, not today's response. Okay. To make it simple, you can actually type a reply, but you create your own discussion thread is much better. Okay. So I'm looking forward to see your response now. Jack, you need to upload your profile pictures here. Take a picture of yourself and upload it, okay? It's going to take a while now. Okay, let me double check now. Okay. It takes a while, it's okay. Don't worry, just take your time. You're doing very good. Once you get used to the first steps of doing interactions like this, it will be great. Remember, it's week number 2, public online discussion forum. So we got Alice's response to IBL, the response from Jack. IBL changes a teacher from a giver to a helper. Okay, it forces students to find the answer by themselves. I think maybe this method will help students to use the knowledge, but that it's Jack's response. Okay, Now, what you need to do now, if you were Alice, after you have read Jack's response, you're going to do your personal response by pressing reply, okay? And give a little bit of your personal thinking to Jack's response. Press reply, okay? And then you can type in something to respond to Jack's ideas, okay? So I'm still waiting for Jack's response and also Kelvin's response to IBM. Looks like ladies type faster than boys. Well, I hope that towards the end of this semester, all of you got A. This is a small class. There's no reasons why you cannot get a good score. You got it? Okay, let me double check it. Okay. Yes, Jack's, it's here. And then let's go to Jack's. Jack's is from Kelvin. Let's see. Are you copying Kelvin's from Kelvin's paper? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Response from Kelvin. Professor answer, but not all. Help student practical thinking. Student think by themselves. Student ask question, but not what they know. They think and think. But that is from Kelvin, right? Student will be on another line. You can always edit it. Okay, I can edit it for you. So it's very simple. So you mean this students, right? On another line, okay? And then you can actually, this is on another lines, right? Yeah, that's much easier. That's why if you have an iPad or notebook computer, it's much more convenient than the smartphone. Now let's go to Kelvin's. Okay, now Jack, would you please click reply and produce your feedback to Kelvin's response, okay? Okay, let me just make sure I do not cut off Kelvin's N. There's an N here. Right. Alright, so now I'm going to go to Kelvin's response. So that is Kelvin's response. Kelvin is copying from Alice's paper. She thinks it's an interesting teaching method. This is your opinion, right? That's your opinion. Okay, so do you want me to put it on the new line? Okay. Alright, so something like this. So let's look at it again. So from Kelvin copies from Alice's message. She thinks it's an interesting teaching method. And then Kelvin's response, I think IPL is a good method to help students with critical thinking. For students, in my response, they are asked to think by themselves. This would help students use the knowledge and think in different ways. Okay, so now I consider that it's your feedback, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the feedback from Jack and Alice. Okay, because that's very important that you do something like this to respond to your fellow students' writing. Response from Kelvin. That is what I did for Jack minutes ago. So what you need to do now is Jack, you need to press this button. Okay, press the reply button. Okay, and produce out your personal feedback. Okay, and now let's see if Alice has done something. Here, I'm waiting for Alice's response to Jack's writing, and definitely Kelvin here is included already in the message. All right, so I'm actually helping you to get used to the discussions which you're going to get into in the context of the next 2 weeks, because in the context of next 2 weeks, when you have the learning partner, okay, if which is a free persons group, we just do a free person group, and you just have to respond to any person's writing by pressing reply and produce some of your personal thinking. Okay, so let's see, let me do a refresh. Okay, so not yet, you're still typing. Take your time, it's okay, take your time. You see, Jack has been very hardworking. He's producing a lot of his personal ideas here after watching the videos that we suggest as of last time. All of these come from Jack, okay? Okay, so let's try to see. Not yet, yeah, because the manipulations of the smart devices, the iPhone, is not as fast as a computer. It's okay, just take your time. You have an iPad and you should have an advantage. Calvin should have an advantage. I want to see that you actually succeed in doing that in class, because a lot of the time we need to use that device to interact with our fellow students. Well, if not now, maybe you continue to do it at home. Let me come back to a little bit of today's themes. Okay, now after the IBL, and I would like to show you a little bit on the ideas of information technology. Okay, so what exactly is information technology? Well, you know that any technology you use which has something to do with information is considered as an information technology. The iPhone, the notebook computer, the telephone at home, anything, the email systems. So let's try to see if we could understand it from a little bit more concise manner. In 1 minute.
Information technology, IT. It's this, and this. IT is wow. It's stuff your parents haven't even thought of yet. IT is moving, it's mixing, sharing, and more. IT is solving a problem, thinking and processing. IT is making money, saving lives, changing the world. It's a living, it's a life. IT is in your pocket, it's at your fingertips. It's here, there, and everywhere. IT is on CSI, in business, in the lab, it's in the hospital, on the radio, in the movies. IT is behind eBay, iTunes, and Facebook. IT is people who make it work, who figure it out, make it happen. That's it. That's IT. Information technology. Talk to your school counselor. Take the classes. You're it.
So many people understand that the importance of IT in today's world is the basic ability to be able to handle the devices which require you to know something about technology. And so in today's world, there are many different positions offered for those IT people. And if you want to join them, you need to know the kind of jobs that will be involved in the business. Now, that is not the purpose for you to continue to watch this, but if you are interested in doing that, definitely I think that
Information
let's
technology.
start this first. Okay, along the side you can see a lot of the very interesting what we call the related videos on the specific on ITs. But now let's come back to our themes. When I invite you to watch the Digital Nations documentary, I think, needless to say, you have been given a lot of stories on people of your age who have been using and are also being affected by the use of technologies in their own life. For example, this one is a continuous of the previous one, growing up on knives. The focus is on teenagers in high school. They're using the computer, to get onto the intellect, and because of that, they have a lot of differences in the context of lifestyle, in the context of mentality. And then these particular documentary, Digital Nations, is about college students. They are being influenced by the internet world, the use of technologies, and so they're living habits or the kind of mentality they possess as a continuation of the story there will make you think a lot more about the world of IT. The last time we have invited you to watch the first chapter, and Jack has already produced some notes there. And today I would like to invite you to continue to watch the second chapter. Okay? But the second chapter is much more interesting, and in the context of what does it does to our brain. Okay? So this is the first chapter. Let's go get it started first. Remember, the first chapter lasts for 8 minutes.
In 2007, Frontline broadcast a film called Growing Up
Let me see if I
Online.
can skip a little bit. The bandwidth, it's okay. I think the problem is not that much. It's just 8 minutes. I'm going to start from here.
Nation for readings at USI.
Right.
And I don't think they're doing either of those things well. I have no idea how to.
2 minutes.
Okay,
right here.
New, because we know zero. Now, in this lab here, we're researching speaking on the cell phone while driving.
Tell me about the time when you had to deal with a difficult person.
You walk around the world and you see people multitasking. They're playing games and they're reading emails, they're on Facebook, etc. Yet, classic psychology says that's impossible. No one can do that. In general, our brains can't do two things at once. And we want to ask the question, how do they do it? Do they have some secret ingredient, some special ability that psychologists had no idea about, or what's going on? You guys were chosen because you're very high chronic multitaskers, and that's what that is.
NAS allowed us to film one of his studies, conducted on a group of carefully chosen students.
On a college campus, most kids are doing 2 things at once, maybe 3 things at once. These are kids who are doing 5, 6, or more things at once all the time.
The experiment looks simple. Identify numbers as odd or even, letters as vowels or consonants. But it's rife with traps in the form of distractions. NAS is testing how quickly these kids can switch between tasks without losing their focus.
I'm pretty much constantly texting, and whenever I study, I have my laptop out.
Brian is a junior.
I'm watching a YouTube video, I'm checking my email, nonstop refreshing the page on Facebook chat.
He's pretty confident that his multitasking is successful.
So that I can always stay connected.
So you think you're effective?
I think so. Okay.
But his results, like others NAS has tested, suggested otherwise.
What we found was that you're actually significantly slower when you're switching than when you're doing kind of the same task consistently.
Virtually all multitaskers think they are brilliant at multitasking. And one of the big discoveries is You know what? You're really lousy at it. It turns out multitaskers are terrible at every aspect of multitasking. They get distracted constantly. Their memory is very disorganized. Recent work we've done suggests they're worse at analytic reasoning. We worry that it may be creating people who are unable to think well and clearly.
When I got back to New York, I noticed how much I too fell prey to distractions. I kept catching myself in the act, checking my email when I should have been writing a script, Googling something to satisfy a random curiosity. This is affecting all of us.
The Shakespeare quote, "We are consumed by that which we are nourished by." Speaking for myself, if all I do is my email and my calendar and my searches and I feel great. I feel like a master of the universe, getting my calendar and my meetings and I just feel great. And then it's the end of the day, I've been busy all day, and I haven't thought about anything hard. I mean, the point of it is to be our most creative selves, not to distract ourselves to death.
Distraction. Combating distraction isn't as easy as turning off your email program. If you turn off your email program, it's not the software that's going to complain, it's the people on the other side, your friends, your boss, your bills. You know, where's my report? Why haven't you answered your email? Are you mad at me? You can't do this in isolation. If you're going to deal with the problem of distraction, it's something we're going to have to deal with together.
I feel like something's out of whack.
Maybe it's time to press the pause button.
Well, it's not just you, it's everybody.
We need to know if we're tinkering with something more essential than we realize.
Changing what it means to be a human being by using all this stuff.
I mean, look at these kids. According to the latest data, most of them are spending more than 50 hours a week with digital media. That's more than a full work week. What is this doing to their brains?
You have young people whose brains are not fully developed. So how a young person chooses to spend their time will have a profound effect on what their brain will be like for the rest of their lives.
So far, there's only one neuroscientist who's actually examined the impact of the internet on our brains, Dr. Gary Small at UCLA. He took MRI scans of people's brain activity reading a book, and then another doing an internet search.
This summarizes what we found in that Brain on Google study. So here's your brain reading a book. Here's your brain on Google. More than twofold increase in the extent of activity. Notice how much activity there is in the front part of the brain, the decision-making part of the brain, which makes sense because we know we're making lots of decisions when we're searching online. So
you'd think more brain activity, all that red, means Google is making us smarter. And in fact, that's what most of the headlines said when Small's research was first released. But I knew it couldn't be that simple.
Where's the other picture? The reading one. I feel like this does not do reading justice.
Well, you know, on a brain scan, big is not necessarily better. You know, if you go to the gym and you start lifting weights, at first you're going to have to use a lot of energy. But if you train, you're going to become much better. You're going to be in better shape, you're going to lift more weight, and it's not going to take that much energy. So one could argue small is better. It's a little bit like playing golf. You want your score to go down.
So wait a second. All that media hype and the doctor himself isn't so sure about their conclusions? Small's study wasn't a confirmation of the internet's beneficial effects. If anything, it was a call for some real research now. So why isn't anyone looking at the real effects of near constant net use?
By the time you design a research study, apply for funding, implement the study, and you publish the results about the technology, what has happened? The technology is obsolete. We move beyond it. And so the technology and the practices that go with the new technologies, they keep outdistancing the research. The research can't catch up with it.
We're immersed in it, and it's changing so rapidly, we're just beginning to grasp what's happening. So think of how long it took us to understand that smoking was bad for our health. I think it takes people a while for reality to hit them in the face. It's hard to get people to stop texting while they're driving, although it's a 23 times greater risk of having an accident. How do you get people to stop these behaviors? It's very difficult.
Since when has spending time online become a risky behavior, like drinking or gambling? Is it that addictive?
I think it's addictive. There's controversy among experts whether it is or not. In Asia, there's a recognition that many teenagers, are addicted to video games. I think that we're behind the Asians in terms of focusing on the problem.
We're going to watch one more chapter, that is chapter 3.
It's hard to follow the story of Asia's digital revolution without somehow ending up in South Korea. South Korea's digital culture isn't characterized by the home computer so much as its legendary internet cafes, known as PC bongs, which dot the streets of every major city here. There are thousands of them in Seoul alone, offering cheap, 24/7, high-speed internet access to the tens of thousands of kids who want to play video games all day, or even all night. Do you ever stay overnight, all night? It's here in the PC bongs, people say, that the Korean gaming craze has gotten out of hand. And it was sobering to see row after row of kids glued to these screens, expressionless. As it turns out, a few people have actually died in PC bongs after gaming marathons where they played 50 hours or more with little food or water. We read the newspaper about Korea. They say gaming is a problem now, that people are addicted to the games, addicted to the internet, and they're not getting their studies done. Do you feel, is there a problem for you?
그렇게 심하게 중독될 정도로 하는 게 아니고 그냥 즐길 정도로 하는 거니까.
중독될 정도로 하는 사람들이 많아요.
많은 사람들이 아직 그 논란을
There's an argument about whether it's a real disease or just a phenomenon.
그렇긴 하는데 인터넷이
But we think it's definitely an addiction.
애딕션의 한 유형이라고 생각을 합니다.
The Korean government commissioned this psychiatrist, Dr. An Dong-hyun, to conduct a 3-year study on the question of internet addiction. His findings helped Korea become one of the first countries to treat it as a psychiatric disorder.
About 90% of Korean children use the internet in their daily life. Of those, about 10 to 15% are in the high-risk group.
What's now a public health crisis began with the best of intentions. 10 years ago, this country emerged from economic crisis by refashioning its culture and commerce around digital technology. Its embrace of the online world was broad and deep, and it's not altogether surprising that South Korea has become one of the first countries to confront the fallout of the digital revolution. We met 15-year-old Chung Myung-il in a city south of Seoul.
It's pretty extreme. I play 7 or 8 hours a day. Then on weekends, I stay up all night on the computer.
When Young-il starts a game, he doesn't know when to stop, and he just plays for hours.
Over the last year, Young-il has dropped from the top half of his class to the bottom. His mother thinks it's because of the computer.
I'm not sure, but I think he mostly uses the computer to play some type of fighting game. I wish those games didn't exist. That inability to communicate with me, his own mother, makes me so sad. I think if I can't control him right now, I may lose my son. This is an addiction. Only an addict could act this way.
In an effort to help kids like Young-il, the Korean government has opened free internet rescue camps throughout the country. At the recommendation of a teacher, Young-il's mother will be leaving him here for 2 weeks.
여러분 여기 들어온 이유가 인터넷을 사용 시간을 줄이고 싶다. 이래서 왔어요.
The day starts with a group counseling session.
나는 인터넷 사용을 해서 건강이 나빠지고 생활이 불규칙해졌다. 거기가 오인 사람. 정보 오야. 정보 오야 거기가.
Most of the kids here say they've had to seek medical treatment for conditions that resulted from overusing the computer,
눈 때문에?
like eye strain and ear complications.
귀 때문에?
The kids' treatment regimen, surprisingly low-tech, seemed designed mainly to recapture a childhood lost to the computer. When you go home, will you start using computer again? Or will it be different?
Honestly, I don't expect a lot. Not using the computer for 10 days was hard. I just kept thinking about the games, or about getting out of the camp and going home.
My heart went out to these kids, casualties of the digital revolution. For better and for worse, these people are connected and connecting through the technologies that I championed 20 years ago, when I first started writing and speaking about a future I called Siberia.
His latest is called Siberia. Doug Rushkoff joined us this morning in New York. Hello, Doug.
Hi, good to be here.
In the early days of the internet, it was easy for me to reassure people about what it would mean to bring digital technology into their lives.
Are folks getting a little afraid of the technology because it's going so quickly? Are we going to be left in the dust, or can we keep up?
Well, I think people get scared as things develop, especially when they...
Back then, I was convinced the web could help us change in profoundly good ways, allowing us to evolve into better people.
I'd like to introduce you, Ms. Tobin, to the new meet human being. Here he is.
It's a new human being that's evolved, I think, to the next level, and I think it's fascinating and wonderful to watch. I felt like I was in on a secret, that these old fuddy-duddies were just panicking, underestimating our kids' ability to adapt to the new reality before us.
You're actually moving around the pixels yourself on the screen.
Over the past 20 years, however, the net has changed from a thing one does to the way one lives, connected all the time. And it appears that far more of these kids than I would have thought are overwhelmed.
인터넷이 텔레비전보다 더 좋은 점에 대해서 배웠지? 자, 그거를
The Korean government has taken an assertive approach to addressing the social problems caused by the net.
밑에 보면 등록하기 있나요?
At Korean elementary schools, kids are taught to go online around the same time they are taught to read.
그러니까 인터넷을 쓸 때는 앞으로 어떻게 써야 돼요 하는 내용을 한번 3줄 정도로 적어볼게요. 몇 줄? 3줄. 자.
But they're also taught something else, how to use computers responsibly. It's required for Korean students, starting in the 2nd grade.
한 번 더. 클릭.
At this school, signs preaching healthy internet habits line the hallways.
And what's this one say?
Slanderous comments on internet hurts my friends.
And this one says, constantly playing computer games shrinks your capacity to think. Our ancestors were known as the politest Eastern state. Now, We are the kingdom of internet etiquette. When a child is just 6 years old, what's the most important things they need to learn about the internet?
기술 교육보다는
I think they must learn ethics first, internet etiquette and manners, and then learn the technical side.
Watching these kids, I'm skeptical that this top-down approach could ever work in America. I guess we'll have to find our own way.
At home in Brooklyn, I have 3 digital natives of my own. Watching my kids with the computer, I find myself wondering, how did they figure this out? Were these skills somehow handed out at birth? And could anything that seems so natural really be bad?
Salut. Salut. Comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous?
Last fall, after a lot of careful consideration, we decided to send our oldest son to a middle school that requires him to use a laptop in class.
We're going to pause here because you have gone through 2 chapters. The first chapter, definitely is the one we showed you on Tuesday. It's about distracted by everything. So Jack has already watched it and you produced your notes there, right? So we've just seen another chapter, which is the second chapter. What is it going to do to our brain? That means when we keep on doing this mobile devices, the kind of habit of using computers, surfing on the net, and do whatever that is appropriate, help us learn. What is it going to do to our brain? Well, we believe we can do multitasking very well, but the research from Stanford University tells us just the opposite. And then in the 3rd chapter, it talks about a phenomenon of kids growing up online, particularly those who are so much addicted to the internet. And they used example of the kids growing up in South Korea to show you. And in order to help the kids to become less addicted, what did they do? They set up what we call an intellect rescue camp. Okay? And the kids will go to the camp for 2 weeks, and then there they're going to have what we call detoxifications of the intellect. Now it's going to be very interesting, and definitely when you move on to chapter 4 is for teaching with technology. And the lady would just want to share with you her personal story in helping her kids to learn with computers. Now what I would like you to do is basically very simple. I would like you to come back next week by doing something. You have gone through 3 chapters, and I would like to add this 4th chapter too. For each chapter, I would like you to watch it separately, and you can always stop it, and then you read some of the informations below it. Okay, there's a lot of very good informations here, and you write down some of the notes about the chapter, just like what you did. Okay, but this time when you write a note, learn a little bit of the inquiry-based learning method I introduced you on Tuesday. Remember the O, observation. You're doing the observations now and watching the video, and you try to express a little bit of the thoughts indicated in the video, and then do a little bit of the interpretations, asking your own question. You don't need to answer them, just ask questions. Okay, 3 questions per chapter. Okay, so for each chapter, ask 3 essential questions. So for the 4 chapters, you're going to produce some observations on each chapter, write it down on your journal, and 3 questions per chapter. Can you do that? All right, 3 questions per chapter after you watch them. And if you are very much interested, definitely I encourage you to watch the whole documentary. It just go on like this, and the whole documentary is basically 1 hour and 25 minutes, 85 minutes, or at most 90 minutes. But watching them all together does not give you the chance to pause and think. That's why I invite you to watch chapter by chapter. After you watch one chapter, write down your thoughts, which is called your observation based on the ideas given, and write down 3 essential questions for that chapter. Now, we do not need to talk about the applications yet, because the OIA requires you to do the O, the I, and the A, okay? Now, just the O and the I. Watch, keep some thoughts about this, and then produce 3 questions per chapter. Can you do that over the weekend? All right? All right. So it's very important that I invite you to do something like this. And you look at the class video for today is going to be posted online tomorrow. Now, the next thing you need to know is, because the second thing we would like you to learn in the context of this week is something on the knowledge society. So let's try to see if we could have some ideas on the knowledge society. Okay? Let's see.
National Knowledge Commission was set up by Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh about 3 years ago to help build knowledge institutions and infrastructure that India would need in the 21st century. Essentially, we focus on 5 aspects of knowledge: access to knowledge, knowledge concepts, knowledge creation, knowledge applications, and knowledge-related services.
The Prime Minister had a brief for the Knowledge Commission. He said that the Knowledge Commission should explore areas where India should focus upon to be in the forefront amongst countries to make use of knowledge as a tool for social development and economic growth.
The economic and social transformation of India in the 21st century will depend in large part on knowledge. For it is only knowledge that can provide the foundations of an inclusive society. The essential object is to improve the well-being of people, ordinary people.
Often knowledge is basically seen simply in terms of education per se, whereas we wanted to extend it to enter all areas of how knowledge is created, how it's developed and disseminated, how people use it, how people access it. And that meant broadening the perception of what it is and how it affects individuals and society. I believe that what's important is first that we have raised a number of important issues in terms of agriculture, in terms of higher education, the use of science and technology, the access to knowledge through translation and libraries. The important thing is that it's got a debate going and that people are then discussing this and thinking about how to change these situations.
The methodology followed in all of them is the same. You first identify a subject, then you gather a group of stakeholders, which is fairly liberal, both by word of mouth and references from others and some obvious stakeholders from the government or NGOs and so on. And then we also constitute a working group with eminent people from this relevant area. And then we have a series of workshops. And then the working group comes out with a report, which is then vetted by the National Knowledge Commission, by the members of the NTC. And then the final report is usually prepared by the member in charge at the NTC. And then it is discussed in the members' meeting, and then there's a letter that goes out to the Prime Minister along with a detailed note on the relevant topic.
Some of our workshops were actually very lively and became, the one group I remember in Lucknow staged a walkout because they didn't like what another group was saying and we had to run after them to persuade them to come back in. So we had all kinds of things going on. But it proved extremely useful because I think we got a sense of the basic problems in different areas.
As far as I am concerned, I think I learned more from the NKC than the NKC learned from me. I was in fact struck by the fact that they were addressing such a wide variety of problems. And they had a very young staff who seemed to do a great deal of background work very much better than the many committees with which I've been associated.
First of all, I think the NKC was an extraordinarily brilliant idea. Also, it was a very diverse set of people. It was people from academia, people from industry, people from research. So I think that certainly gave me a worldview which I did not have before that, because I was able to interact with different people from different backgrounds and often with different ideologies. But I think the good news is that we all managed to come together and come out with what we think are solutions that expand access to Indians.
We are faced with three fundamental challenges in India. Disparity between rich and poor, urban, rural, educated and uneducated. Second major challenge is demography. We are a country with 550 million people who are below age of 25. What kind of future we will provide for our young generation? What kind of education, jobs, opportunities, growth? And the third is development. Everything is happening in India, but perhaps not at the pace we would like. So the key is to use knowledge to reduce disparity, provide better opportunity to young, and expedite the process of development.
India is entering its demographic dividend in the next 30 years. And not only is it entering a demographic dividend with 1 billion people, it is also the only country which is young in an aging world. So that gives a unique opportunity that no other country has. But to get the full yield of a demographic dividend, our human capital needs to be empowered. They need to be educated, they need to have good health, they need to have access to markets and jobs. So that's why we have to make sure we do all the right things, which the Knowledge Commission has been recommending. We have to keep pushing to make sure these reforms happen, because we owe it to the young people of India.
We want to use this website to get people interested in what NKC is doing, to get them to talk about what NKC is doing. I may not agree with everything we are saying, but there are issues that we have flagged and they might have their own take on it, they might have their own solutions on it, but fine, go ahead, implement it and share it with the rest of the country and then make things happen.
Whole idea of building a knowledge society is really an idea of empowering young men and women through education, and also ensuring that all your delivery systems are built on the premise of the latest knowledge, and that in every sphere of human activity, bit of an exaggeration, but almost in every sphere of human activity, you are able to use cutting-edge knowledge.
To me, a knowledge society would be one where every citizen has got equal capabilities to access and use knowledge productively. And that is a very long haul. That means we have to begin from the very beginning in terms of not just school education, but even nutrition that allows every citizen to access. But it therefore means you have to have a much more holistic perception of how knowledge affects you. It can come in many different ways. It doesn't have to come through the standard ways that we have been thinking of. And it has to actually improve people's capacities for lifelong learning.
We see many of the things happening because many people in the country want them to happen. NKC just happens to be a small organization commissioned by the Prime Minister, which possibly acts as a minor catalyst. In the 12th five-year plan, a huge and unprecedented amount of allocation has been made. A number of IITs have been announced, a number of higher institutes of science and technology have been announced, many universities are being upgraded. I think change will happen. I think people who are not able to keep up with change will fall by the wayside, but people who want change will drive it.
As we are growing with 7 to 10% growth rate in our economy, we are already finding that we have severe skill shortages. And it's very critical to recognize that if we don't build the right kind of institutional infrastructure, we will not be able to sustain the kind of growth we have. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh recognized all of this and took this bold initiative to launch National Knowledge Commission. And we hope this in turn will give us a new sense of direction in the country to build the foundation that we need for the knowledge institutions and infrastructure in the 21st century.
Okay, the significance of this sub-video tells you the term knowledge society is not just a term, it's something that we cannot just turn our face away from it. Now this particular video helps us to understand the perspective of a country, which is India. Okay, India is very close to China. There's a lot of very similar characteristics like in China, except that we often have pictures that India is a lot of what? A lot of people. Okay, so now what I would like you to know more about this importance of knowledge society is, if you have time, go to visit the National Knowledge Commissions, as you can see just now from the Indian government, and try to see if you can find something similar from China. Okay, well in China definitely, mostly it's in Chinese, not in English. Okay, but you can try to do this simple search. Okay, now you use this as a very interesting case study, which is an effort produced by the Indian government. Now, see if we have something similar from our Chinese government. Okay, you do not need to worry if you cannot find anything, but I just want you to take a good look at it. All right. So I think I'm going to stop today because it's already 2:20, and hopefully you're going to come back next week. All right. So, and then we carry on with the conversations. Okay. Okay. That's it for today. All right. So that's it for today. CISG114, Section 1, Web Technology and Light, on January the 16th, 2015. Until next Tuesday, stay in tune.